Welcome everybody to yet another Artistry and Games interview. Today I'm sitting down with Dean Razahavi of the developer behind Vidar. Dean, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you doing, Oliver?
I'm doing good. Freezing cold, but good.
Yeah. I'm up in New York, and it's been pretty blistering here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little painful to go outside sometimes. So.
Yeah. All right. To start off, what inspired Vidar? Or Vidar, which one is it?
It's it's kind of the name is a reference to the Norse god Vidar, but I've been going with Vidar just to Americanize it and kind of make it a little bit easier to pronounce. The inspiration came definitely from a few different places. Just in terms of the core mechanic of having a town where people are slowly leaving and disappearing and dying. I really liked. I'm a sucker for games where you can get people to come to your town. To like halfway through the game, you end up with like a blacksmith who's like making you better weapons in the same town, or like a bridge is built and that allows you access to something else, or all of these different kinds of mechanics where a city is slowly growing in front of you. And I wanted to see what happens if you turn that on its head. I wanted to know what a game looks like if you have everybody there and then they start to leave. They start to, there's some reason that they're like suddenly gone. And that was one of the big inspirations for the kind of core mechanic. Around the same time that I started kind of back in the napkin, sketching out with art, a dear family member of mine passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He was definitely a role model in my life and very much kind of, I felt like a soulmate almost. He was much older and he lived an extremely exciting life. And so to kind of see how his death impacted a lot of other people and the community around him was really it's something that impacted me a lot, and it was definitely on my mind when I was starting to kind of come up with the general concept for the game. So I wanted to do something that had those mechanics but explored some heavier themes. I was definitely in
definitely a pathologic style approach.
And see how we can tell the story about death from that perspective, as opposed to video gamers deal with death pretty much in every game, but it's sometimes treated flippantly or lightly or casually, or not treated at all. And this was something that I wanted to explore as a topic, from a narrative perspective. Yeah.
Loss is something we very rarely see. In fact, the only example I can think of is the XCOM series.
Yeah. The XCOM series is an excellent example of that. It happens occasionally. If it does, it's one or two individual NPCs have lost somebody or lose somebody in the middle of the game. Everybody had to deal with Ares' death, but it's not loss as as a driving theme behind the narrative. So those were really the big inspiration points for the game. Since then I've kind of gone back and looked at things like, if we're dealing with loss, then we're also dealing with nostalgia. It's a closely related feeling of, a memory of a better past and kind of like the golden age or something like that. And for me, that really brought in a lot of references to older games. So the art style in particular is really focused on the golden age of JRPGs from the SNES. It's pixelated art. It looks it pulls a lot from Final Fantasy. Trigger and all those games. And I did that intentionally. I'm working with an artist, Becca Bear, who's amazing. She's out in Colorado. And she's really done a good job of kind of capturing the nostalgia elements of that. By which I mean taking those styles and those designs and then desaturating it, taking out all those bright colors we're familiar with, so that it's kind of it looks like the past. It looks like it's this almost faded memory of what was really good at some point. So.
Kind of like the difference between modern gritty lacking of color to Silent Hill, where it's like the life itself is being sucked out of the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a reliance on gritty games, which isn't to say I don't love my gritty games, but there's a reliance there to just go black, like to just say, all right, well, shade more of the screen with black so that you have like a narrower field of view, and make things that are just more in monotone, and even narratively, I think that there's some cop outs when you just go for grit.
Yeah.
And this isn't supposed to be about grit. It's dark, but it's dark in the sense of you've got to go to a dark place in yourself to really, work through some of the emotions of losing a close person in your life. So, yeah. I mean, there's as opposed to like setting up a dark world, you're dealing with darker themes. Yeah. So to try and get that, necessarily into the game artistically, it starts to, the music isn't necessarily what you would think of from gritty games. It's much more focused on Adrian Jakubiak, he's actually in Poland. This team is kind of all over the place, but he's done all the music, and it's all very like chamber orchestra or focused on small community instrumentation almost. So you'll have like a strong piano melody, a very little light percussion, some strings to kind of tie all of that feeling in, so that it's not necessarily. I mean, it's more paced as opposed to just like heavy and evil.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. A bit of a karaoke there, with even a little bit kind of like with the limited styles of Paula Cole, where she would focus more on just light instruments and vocals instead of trying to go heavy on guitar. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. There's very little electronica that's going on. There's here we're staying away from vocals, but it is definitely that core feel that you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. You want to feel like there's a handful of people in a room playing instruments with you, and that's it.
So how do you actually handle the randomization elements with the puzzle aspect? One part we haven't talked about yet, and it's a big part, because you're trying to stop all these awful things from happening, and you don't really do anything with combat. Was that ever considered? And just really, how do you handle making randomized puzzles? Because that has got to be a headache.
Yeah, so it's so I guess I'll tackle each of those. In terms of combat, I've never really loved random encounters, and well, I guess I did when I was growing up. I had like the patience for anything in games growing up, but I find myself now like going back and playing, or even contemporary, playing JRPGs or RPGs, especially where there's like 10, 20 random encounters before I get to the next boss. I'm like, listen, I blocked out 90 minutes to play a game tonight. I better get some plot. Like, I better figure out, like, what's going on. Because if I don't have anything to show for playing games tonight, like, we're done here. So I personally have become a little bit impatient with them. And also, it really didn't fit the style of the game. This whole, like, the idea of leveling up or of like fighting monsters or something like that. I really just wanted to have one kind of core enemy that's become a problem. So originally I was playing with ideas of combat. There were some super early builds of the game that had more combat ideas, especially when I had this idea of the townsfolk would be offering you more concrete things like weapons or things like that, as opposed to quest items to help you solve puzzles, and so it didn't really feel right, and ultimately I scrapped it, and I think the game is cleaner for it. And so what you're left with is a Zelda dungeon without the combat, or without a boss, and it's just the puzzles, which is always my favorite part. I'm playing through the remake of Wind Waker right now that they released for Wii U, and I love the puzzle elements of it so much more than ultimately the combat, which I feel like gets in the way.
Yeah, I felt the same way when going through Tomb Raider Anniversary recently. I just put a guide for my PC, and I'm happy whenever I'm just navigating the environment and solving the puzzles, so I really get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to distill it down to that core experience. Everyone knows, I think, that no game developer would shy away from the argument that random combat especially, or is used as a filler.
Yeah.
Like it's just to prolong the gameplay, and I don't need to do that. So I'm not looking to make sure that you play this game for like 20 hours. So forget it. As for the second question on the random puzzles, it's actually so there's 3 levels of randomness in the game to try and make sure that there's that you don't see anything twice. So I guess the first one is you're only going to go through a set number of rooms in the cave, and that number has to be capped because you've got 24 people in town. You've got a time limit on how much time you can spend in the cave. And so I can't just keep building onto a dungeon, right? That's contained because you've only got 24 attempts to solve all the puzzles in your particular playthrough. And hopefully a lot fewer, it should take on average fewer than 24. So once that's done, the next thing is to build other potential rooms. So, okay, so right now there's about 20 different rooms that you could see in the ice cave portion of it, but you're only going to see 4 or 5. So that's the first random factor. The second part is each room is designed to have multiple paths that you can go through it, and just a quick few roadblocks that get popped up in one way or another to force you through a particular path means that if there are 4 puzzles in a room, you're only going to see 2 at a time or something like that. And then the third has been actually generating content for those puzzles. So I'm not, working with any kind of fancy algorithm that generates a puzzle on the fly or something like that. Instead, I've gone in and made a database of, several hundred puzzles that, can be populated at any particular point at any time. And actually, it's I've built up this system where it's actually pretty easy to just kind of go through and add another puzzle into the mix. And the one of the Kickstarter rewards, actually, because we're working on the Kickstarter right now, is to design a puzzle that could gets into the bank, and so could potentially be shown on any given playthrough of the game. Since it's so, from my perspective, it's now actually really easy to import those.
Nice.
So it gives me more, rather than trying to figure out how to exactly design something that's going to come up with the right placement of whether it's switches or mirrors or light beams or water levels and that kind of stuff, or boulders or whatever it is. Doing it this way allows me more finite control over the puzzles to make sure that they are the right difficulty for where they go in the game, and also to make sure that they're teaching the right skill. So, puzzle games are really about, this puzzle is teaching me that this is now something that I can do. Now for the next 5, I'm going to have to master that, or I'm going to have to apply that in new and interesting ways. And that's something that I really have precise control over by doing it this way.
Interesting. That's actually not the first time I've actually heard this type of system. You've got kind of a mix going on here between I cannot think of its name, the PS4 giant space MMO type one. I cannot believe I cannot think of it. No Man's Sky, and you've also got a bit, and but you're not familiar with that one.
I don't think so.
I will have to send you a link afterwards because trust me, you'll appreciate how they go.
So I tend to glaze over that news.
But also, I don't know if you've heard of them. Have you ever heard of Kit Fox? It was one of my earliest interviews I actually did for Artistry. We did it with their lead designer, Tanya. They also have a similar randomization system to what you've got going on. Even though they're doing it in an action RPG space, they actually have a very similar system. They had pre-made assets and pre-made little areas that could then be randomized therein. A lot like what you say you have for your puzzle system.
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense. I mean, I don't... If you, when you play pure roguelikes, for any kind of thing where they don't have those pre-made, ideas, you can feel it. You can really get a sense of it. I mean, and I think that the best random games have some kind of combination. Even I'm thinking more like sandbox games like Starbound, for example, is working on these concepts of we're going to have more pre-made dungeons, and then we're going to plop those like in a random space. And so I think that there's, even you even see it in all of the Diablo games. I mean, if you want to make something that's more compelling, it takes a human hand.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But that's encouraging to hear that there are other people that are working on a similar system.
Oh yeah. Yeah, indeed. So how has the reception actually been to the game's Kickstarter demo? I'm going to be playing through and previewing it, and those of you watching will probably be seeing gameplay playing over in between us when we're not showing each other's faces. How has it been with the community thus far?
It's fun. So I would say there's kind of a few breakouts of different people. I think that the best reception has come from people who played it several times. So the demo, is pretty short and is designed to be short, in part because it's the same demo that we showed at, with edits, but we show at conventions like the Boston Festival of Indie Games. We're doing MagFest in a few weeks.
Oh, very nice.
And you kind of want to be able to get like people in and out to make sure that enough people can play the game.
Yeah.
So it's intentionally short, but has multiple different options. So the way the demo starts, they drop you right in the middle of it, and 3 people are just killed right off the bat in the demo. We're pulling no punches. Just there's some text that shows up, and it's like, by the way, so and so's dead, so and so's dead, so and so's dead. Deal with it. Move on with your life. Let's get into the demo. And the way that it really can change the way that the demo plays out. So there's really 4 big branches just within this 15-minute demo that you can see. 4 completely different puzzle, options. One of which never leaves town. It's one of the town events that can happen where somebody's house starts to burn down.
Oh, nice.
The exact 3 people that died. And so there are these, different branches, and the people who have given me responses saying, I played it 3 times and got 3 different things that happened, they're the ones that are really excited about it. They're like, I totally get like where this is gonna head. It makes sense. It sounds ambitious, but is totally doable based on what you've shown. Like I see it now, and everything is clear.
Yeah.
The people who have gotten, who've only played it through once, have loved it if they've beaten the demo, or said this game is way too hard if they weren't able to solve the puzzles like in the artificial constraints of the demo, because in the demo, when the day is over, that's it. The demo's over. As opposed to in the actual game when it just means you teleport back to town, another person's dead, you'd try the puzzle again the next day. So other people are like, nope, this game is impossible. Like I want nothing to do with it. So it's funny to see kind of those different ranges of reaction to the demo. But by and large, we've gotten really great responses. There's been there's a group up here called Playcrafting NYC, which does a demo night every quarter. So
awesome.
For a year, and I've been able to show the game I guess 2 times, and I'm going to be showing it again in a few weeks at Playcrafting, just through them. And it's about 200, 300 people that show up, and you get to show it off just for a few hours, and it's been really fun to like apply an iterative process to this, like to say, okay, everyone is giving me this feedback. I can totally make that change, tonight, and I can, apply that going forward, as opposed to, I think a lot of game devs kind of get wrapped up in making the game first, and then they're like, all right, and now it's time to get, some feedback, and so it's way too late to make changes.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I'm taking a much more iterative approach to this, and I think one of my favorite examples of this was because the style is so reminiscent of Final Fantasy VI, in terms of graphic style. Everyone at the first demo night started walking up to every single clock and every single bookcase and every single fireplace that's in the game and pressing A to see what's gonna happen.
Nice.
And it's like Square has somehow managed to like condition an entire generation of gamers psychologically that like there's gonna be something hidden in that clock. You better check it, and you're really gonna wish you had it. And I didn't have anything hidden in the clock, and I felt like guilty. I was like, oh my god, they're looking for something, and there's nothing there. So the second, or the next time I demoed it was at Boston Festival of Indie Games, and I had put in a few. I put in like 5 different things throughout the town. This made it even worse because now that people found flavor text.
Oh dear, it's behaviorist theory. They're gonna just start looking now because
100%. They found one thing and now they're gonna scour the entire. You could just go and play the rest of the game. Like, it's fine. So finally, what I settled on, it worked really well for the next demo that I did, was to, when you got close to something that you can interact with, just for some flavor text, just a tiny little hover notification pops up over it. And people picked up on that. They realized what that meant. And now people don't check things nearly as often. Like, and they're not just going up to the wall and pressing A against, every single tile of the wall. It's behaviors like that I 100% would have never figured out or even begun to think about until I was watching people play the demo. And so getting that experience is like the most invaluable thing that I think anybody could really get.
Yeah, I think especially for the year of 2014, we learned very quickly that early quality assurance and feedback is very important for your game.
Absolutely. I mean, we found that out with games that don't have random elements to it, that don't, that are just on rails. And anybody should have just been able to like power this game on and been like, dude, where's this guy's face? What happened to his face? I don't know. Like, you can't release this game, this guy's got no face.
Oh, actually, I don't mean to be taking us off topic, but they released Dead Kings finally. Would you believe it's even more broken? You can get stuck on an invisible wall, and at one point you're supposed to find this kid. They never put a marker on him in an entire town you're supposed to search through. You have to restart the entire mission to get the marker to appear.
Oh, and all it takes is sitting seriously, like, go to a convention, watch 3 people play that mission, and 2 of them won't be able to find him, and will turn to you and be like, where's a marker? Like, I don't know where he is.
Exactly.
Are you gonna help me with this or not? Because I got other things to do. You'll get that like so fast. It's the feedback. I think it's just such an important part of it. I mean, it's already made just the demo that I've had for the running for these conventions leaps and bounds better, and I've been able to then take those lessons and apply it for the rest of the game going forward. So. Yeah, I think that's a good lesson to learn from 2014. I totally agree with you. 2014 was the year of get more quality control.
Yes, it was. Now, moving away from the past year, you're a lawyer turned game developer. How exactly did that happen? Why did you choose gaming as your new career?
Yeah, I mean, so, like, full disclosure, I'm also still a practicing lawyer.
Oh, well, that's good for you.
Yeah. Good for you. But I've been doing it for about a little over 4 years now. But ultimately, it's not where my passion has ever really been. And I've always been like a hobbyist or tinkerer, kind of getting like flirting with programming languages, but never actually committing to anything. And ultimately this, really it was like with this game and a few other projects that I had started before that to just try and get my feet wet, understand it. It was fun. It was really enjoyable. It brought me back to what I wanted to do. My husband, who, while I occasionally look over, my husband's sitting right over here, so that's why I occasionally like.
Oh, it's fine.
But he's also a really avid gamer. Like our formative, first 2 months of dating was almost exclusively through the StarCraft 2 beta.
Very nice.
And it's been, we had like a video game themed wedding, and it's
awesome.
Become much more a part of my life. Yeah, so
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's I'm getting more re-immersed in that culture. It's something that I kind of took a break from in law school, and just to have that back in my life has been great. And having a husband who's been really encouraging me to take the plunge has has helped with that too. It's not something that I think I would have necessarily just done on my own.
Oh yeah, you always need the
And, like,
support. You always
can
need
do
the
this.
support.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's excellent.
So yeah, I mean, and it's also so I tend to do a lot of entertainment work as well, like in the legal profession. So having that background in terms of like contracts and trademark and IP and all that kind of stuff was has made the process.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. So I'm in between all this. I actually am still working on a small indie myself, and that's the thing I'm most terrified of. Is trying to work through that stuff.
Of all of like the legal, you know.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's a lot, and it's, you know, from my perspective, like I had a logo. I was like, all right, let's go file for a trademark, and my husband's like, dude, you got to get a game first. Like, you really got to maybe work on a little bit more code before. I'm like, no, this is the easy part. So yeah, it's funny what I think everybody gravitates towards, or what, you know, parts some people think are, you know, low-hanging fruit, and other, I mean, you know, from your background, it's got to be like the most like nonsense stuff. Like, why are people using these words that don't make any sense? Yeah.
It's just there's so many potential traps you can walk into. That just terrifying. Yeah.
So you know, it's been from my perspective, of course, like coming into the game development industry has been just a total new culture shock for me. You know, I think that being a gamer has almost nothing to do with understanding what game development is about.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Totally different industry.
Oh yeah.
But it's been great. You know, there are a ton of. I'm blessed to live in New York City, and it's a city with just tremendous resources for really whatever you want to do, including game development, and to have access to that, and to have a really welcoming community here too. That's been, you know, just supportive and excited about Vidar, and encouraging, has been great. So.
Well, that really brings me to my next question. As an indie dev just starting out, and you've already given some, what other advice would you give to people looking to begin their careers in gaming? Maybe potentially, once again, going from another career that would be very different otherwise.
Yeah. So I think if you happen to be in anything close to a metropolitan area, look for meetups. For me, that was like really just, it was the impetus that I needed. It was the entry that I took that I really needed to actually get into the industry. To re-reference playcrafting, they had a class on narrative design. And it was, you know, 6 to 9 at night. You know, creating characters, like creating your protagonist for your video game. And I was, you know, already knee deep in Vidar, but was excited to hear about this class. And I was like, okay, I'll go. It was after work. It was a, you know, like a $10, $15 class. I was like, sold. And I came home and would not stop talking. It was eye-opening. It was amazing, because from somebody who's new, you're just gonna go in there and soak it up all like a sponge.
Yep.
And if I'm sure there were veterans in that room that were like, this is boring. I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm like, this is amazing. And to have, you know, that entry, to have somebody talk about the industry in a room with you, that's all you need. That's the first step.
Yeah.
It'll give you enough threads that Google will get you the rest of the way. But I'd say that's really, for me, was the critical part, was just finding a meetup. And if you can't do that, then like find a Facebook group or find a forum where you can just read about and listen to people talk about indie dev. Like, be a fly on the wall for a while. I had nothing to contribute to any of the groups that I'm a part of in New York for like 6 months at least. Like, I had nothing to say. I was just gonna sit in the back of the room and just listen. And I think that taking advantage of whatever resources you can find from other more experienced people is the best way to do it. I would say the one pitfall is, don't assume that you're different. Don't assume that, don't think that that, oh, well, I'm going to be doing this a different way. Like I read this one article that says that like you really shouldn't, start on your first game shouldn't really be an MMO, but that's really like what my passion is. And that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna like
Yeah.
I'm not different. You ain't different. No one.
No one is the special snowflake.
Right. Like heed the advice and just take in you can ultimately like process it and say, you know what, this actually doesn't apply to me. This doesn't. Maybe my situation is a little bit different, but keep it in the back of your mind because it's going to come up at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Have realistic expectations going in.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, listen, if you're thinking about breaking into this, you've already got high hopes, and that's great, and you need it. Like, you need a combination of extremely high hopes, extremely reasonable goals, very thick skin, some combination of all of these, which all sound like they're kind of fighting against each other.
Yeah.
But you need to absolutely set realistic goals, and then at the same time, nobody will be a bigger advocate for you than you, and so you have to be your biggest champion, you have to believe in yourself more than anyone else does, and it's a balance.
Yeah, it really is a balance.
Yeah, to make sure that you don't feel like, basically, you have to put like all of your faith into your match 3 game, like, and you just have to believe it's the best thing in the world, just to like get through that and then move on to your next project. Yeah.
I know what you mean, specifically when you're talking about the pitfall, because there's a reason that Arsenal Games doesn't follow the traditional 1 to 10 or 1 out of 5 sort of rating system. We have specific ratings for specific things, like E for everyone, or all sorts of ones. We have a very particular one for games that hit that pitfall, and it is actually called Special Snowflake.
Special Snowflake.
So far, 2 games have already gotten that.
Have already become Special Snowflake?
Yes, 2 of them have already.
I mean, listen, if you can be successful, as a Special Snowflake, phenomenal. I mean, like that's like the cream of the crop. But there is a career there. There's like a large, so both my parents actually, in 2 totally different fields, have started their own small lifestyle businesses. Like, they're not tech startups that are looking to be bought out by Google, and but they're not like scrambling for money either. And they both have like managed to get to a place where their businesses were enough to be comfortable, and that's important, and that exists in game dev too. I've seen it. I'm not there yet, but I've definitely seen it, and I think that should really be people's target.
Yeah.
Hit it out of the park, then awesome. But like, if you're able to put bread on the table, then awesomer.
Yes, living. You need to do that to make the big ones.
There's a great guy that I know in New York who developed a Golden Wake, which is like a point-and-click adventure game, and he just recently joined Wajit Games like full-time, and I'm just like so super thrilled for him that this is now what he's doing full-time, and that he's able to make it work. That's more tremendous than I'm going to have the next like top seller on Steam. So.
Going over to your Kickstarter campaign, which is, as we've said, is going on right now, is there any particular stretch goal you're hoping for to reach?
Yes. One in particular, and it's actually kind of low on the spectrum. Some of like the high end goals, I was like, yeah, whatever, we'll never reach it. But some of the one of the lower goals is, I've mentioned Becca, who's the artist that's working on this. She's done all the pixel art for the game, but I want to get some illustrations in there. I have this dream of every night when a NPC is killed off, doing like some kind of painterly illustration work, talking about their story up until that point.
Just giving them more of a human persona then, so that you actually see them like more like a person, less like a bit of pixel art.
Less like 32 pixels wide, exactly. So, and I really think that would be I mean, it's fluff. It's not necessary for the game, but I think that would be really cool.
Oh yeah, I see that making a lot of good emotional punch.
Yeah. So that and I the other one that I would say is there's the potential to do a live orchestration recording of the soundtrack for the game. The soundtrack, like, it's something that I'm really excited about. I was actually Adrian is doing all the music for this. In a lifetime ago, I was actually a music major in undergrad, and so the music of the game is like near and dear to my heart. And I'd love to hear that live recorded, and that's actually kind of in the middle of the stretch goals too. So those two I think would be great to have, and we'll fingers crossed that we hit some of them. Yeah.
And for those of you watching, we will be including a link to the Kickstarter page. Please be sure to give it a look, and if you like what you see, be sure to fund Vidar.
Yeah, definitely. We would love your support. We're going to be encouraging people at MagFest and a few other events coming in the coming months to play the demo, and if they like it, back us. The demo is also downloadable from the Kickstarter page, so I definitely encourage, like, if people see it, they think about, they're like, oh, this looks interesting, play it at home, play it 3 times, because like I said earlier, it's going to be different. So
yes, be sure to replay.
Yeah, it's all about the replay value.
But now, in the back of my mind, I can see it as the funny scenario where it's like, there's going to be like one guy out there who's going to replay and immediately end up with the same scenario. It's just going to be like the one guy. That'll be the one person who leaves a comment on the YouTube video like, you lied!
You told me that this was different. I'm pretty sure you just hard-coded in the same stuff. I'm like, no, I swear. Yeah, of course it happens.
Yeah.
But there's... I had mentioned earlier there was this one event where the right 3 people have to die for a house to burn down, and I remember going to a demo night. Actually, it was through like a TED event, and the first person to like come in the room and play the game hits that, and so there's people looking over their shoulders and like looking at the monitors, and I'm going through the pitch, but now also having to add all this complexity of like, but then there's also these town events and they do all these things, and there's all these extra elements to this, and this, what you're seeing, is actually a rare thing that happens in the game, and the normal game looks something a little bit different. But it's that random chance where it happened to hit that the first time, and I was like, all right, we'll go with it. Hopefully a handful of people will be able to see that event as well. I have a little bit of analytics built into it just to see what events different people are getting. So I haven't pulled it up in a while. I'll have to pull it up to see if anybody has downloaded the game from the Kickstarter to see if that's one that they've experienced.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has got to be a crazy game to actually see the metrics on once things start rolling out.
It's important to see that as well, especially when you're dealing with the puzzles, because you want to make sure that if there's 20 options for a particular slot of the puzzle, then you want to make sure that on average they're taking people about the same length of time to do, because you budgeted a certain length of time for that whole room. And if one of the options is remarkably easier or harder, then you need to be able to balance it out, either by marking it as a hard puzzle and putting an easier puzzle in next, or by adjusting the puzzle itself to bring it more in line with the timing. So the metrics become just incredibly important for balancing purposes, and to make sure that a game this complex is balanced, you need a lot of plays. So fortunately, I have some very patient friends.
Friends, they're always there to beta test.
Patient former friends who are now like no longer returning my calls.
Guys, I got a new build!
It's build 47. It's way different than build 46, I swear.
Alright, well, we've got just enough time left. At the end of our interviews, we normally like to have our interviewee ask me or our audience a question.
All right, so I've got one for you and then one for the audience.
All right.
So I guess the first one for you is, what kind of characteristics do you think make a special snowflake? We were talking about this earlier. you found a handful, and I want to know, because I'll caveat the question a little bit and say it's important, and I think that indie dev allows a great freedom to think outside the box. I think that we get games that are more experimental. I think that we get games that are that would never have come out of a AAA studio because they just can't.
Well, if you don't mind me cutting it off there, that's a perfect example. There's a reason that we have one, I forget, I haven't written up any reviews recently, so I'm going to actually be running myself through the categorization system, but we basically have one for different, because different is fine. Hell, I love different. Even for my personal YouTube channel, I cover games specifically there that are different. I don't try to just go for, here's my review of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare that 14 people will look at because everyone's already bought it. Special Snowflake for me is, I really don't want to be rubbing salt into the wound of a particular developer, but their game is just such a perfect example of what a Special Snowflake is. I'm sorry guys behind it, but the Old City Leviathan, which it's a lot like Dear Esther. That's what a lot of people compare it to, but it's so pretentiously written and thinks it's this groundbreaking, insightful game. Special Snowflake doesn't necessarily mean that it is trying to be an MMO being built by one guy. Because I've seen it, I actually know a guy who's made an MMO and is currently doing his thing with it, but...
That's awesome,
But I would classify that as different, and yeah, it is awesome. I'm glad I got to contact him. I'm actually hoping to check up on the latest build of the game, but he wasn't a Special Snowflake because he was very realistic and aware of his situation, what his goals were, what his game was. Basically, Special Snowflake is a blend of really good concept but horribly executed, or just so pretentious that even if something comes across, it's just done in such a precocious, pretentious manner that there's no way to take it seriously. Because I know that there are unique games. We're joking, unique is what we use. We use unique for if it's just, if it's particularly standout. I think, like with this war of mine, I think Caleb actually gave it a unique amongst one or two other letters. And it's not like it was bad because it was unique, it was just that it's unique. And that's the difference. A Special Snowflake, you say it out loud and it sounds like this could either be used as some kind of weird compliment or as an insult, whereas unique is like, you're unique, you're distinctive.
Absolutely.
So really, that's what it means for me, at least. It's just that, if I give the game Special Snowflake, it's like, I might even appreciate what you're going for here, but you really gotta reassess yourself or the game.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an impulse for people that have a message that are like, all right, I'm gonna hit you over the head with it. I'm gonna make sure that you get this no matter what. And it's definitely something that I find. I'm dealing with similar. I'm not gonna say deep themes. I'm going to say troublesome themes. Themes that deal with a lot of complexity, and so I have to kind of always pull myself back and be like, Dean, the person who enjoys philosophy would say something like this. This character would never say something like the dialogue that I just wrote. Scrap it, rewrite it, make sure that it's more like the player will get it. It doesn't mean that the characters all have to be parroting the theme over and over and over again. So yeah, I totally understand that level of this game is trying to be artsy or trying to be something that maybe it's not necessarily delivering on.
That's it.
Yeah. I guess my question for the audience then is, besides obviously artistry and games, where do people find out about indie games? What's the general approach to that? I feel like a lot of people come at it from different ways, and there's so many different avenues out there. Some people will find out about an indie game purely because it's on the recently released page of Steam, and then some people will track the ever-loving crap out of a particular game because they heard about it somehow and this is their new favorite thing on earth. And I'm always curious about discovery when we're in an era of so many indies where are people actually getting that information? Not necessarily their news, but where are they discovering something?
Yeah, where you're hearing about, where you're encountering it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been interesting for me because even just personally, it's been evolving a lot. I used to be, I just pretty much, is it on moddb/IndieDB? Okay, then I've heard about it. But nowadays, as I've actually gotten more into social media, that's where it happens a lot more. I seem to see that a lot more. It's like, hashtag IndieDev has just lit up. I hear about so many games now. I even actually saw Vidar pop up because of that on Twitter.
That's awesome. Yes, excellent. Something is working. No, I think that Twitter has really become the tool of choice for indie developers. But there's a lot of noise. There's like so much that just gets posted.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I can't keep up with it at all either. And all you really need to follow are like the Indie Sloth or like a handful of other Twitter accounts which aggregate like indie dev and game dev hashtag. And just following 3 accounts, you're going to have just a non-stop stream of tweets.
Oh yeah.
And it's exhausting. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
To try and keep track of that. So I have to believe that there's something out there, or there's something will come, which is a little bit more targeted, but is still as useful to indie developers. So.
Well, there's actually been an interesting development. Vidar, might even take a look at this. Would you believe Imgur has recently been a place where indie devs are going?
I was reading recently an article. I can't remember the developers, but there was a developer who ran a Kickstarter on a game, and they were successful. They had an article on Gamasutra that was like the tips we learned from the Kickstarter, and a lot of the stuff is things that you'll see all the time.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have your screenshots. Make sure that the trail, that you have gameplay immediately in your video. Make sure that your tiers include the game. Make sure all these kinds of things. But then one of theirs was like, oh, by the way, make sure you go viral on Imgur because that's what we did and it totally worked out for us.
I actually...
Their stats like skyrocketed as soon as they had, like some screenshots that got, viral on Imgur, and that's really what it took. And I was like, I never even thought, read it, but I never thought of Imgur.
Yeah, Imgur pretty much is just cat gifs, Jover, and women's breasts. That's pretty much what Imgur is for. And yet apparently, indie devs now too.
And I always just viewed it as and support for Reddit, that was like the body of what was going on. But no, it's like its own thing. There's a whole community that's built there, and I feel like you'll find community corner of the internet and trying to find a game.
You seem to be breaking up. The connection seems to be getting weird.
Oh, I just lost you on video.
All right, there, you're back. You're back.
Okay, maybe.
Your video just disconnected, but you're still here.
No. I didn't do anything.
Technical difficulties! Skype's getting tired of the interview.
Can you still see me?
Not right now. Right now you're showing the default icon.
Okay. So I find... Oh. Success? Now?
It's loading. You're in. You are in.
Sweet. All right. I don't know what happened. That was weird.
Yeah.
But I think that part of the indie problem now, and why Twitter is so popular, is because everybody's on Twitter. But now the idea is, all right, find your corner, find where that community is that's really going to love you, because it's out there. It's definitely there somewhere.
There's always a niche.
Yes, absolutely. Which is what I think indie dev excels at. Is they don't need to sell billions of copies, so they can make it, make a game that targets the niche.
And only 20 people may buy it, but still, those 20 people will be made super happy.
Exactly. And that's nice in and of itself. Yeah.
Yes. All right, Dean, I want to thank you for taking your time today to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic talking with you, man.